This mixer might be one of the best investments I've made in a long time. Here we have my personal Soundcraft Ui16. I love this mixer. Now, I am a Soundcraft dealer, so let's just get that disclosed out of the way. But yeah, I just love this thing. And I think it has such a good value for the dollar that it's hard for me to recommend much else on the market. It is actually getting difficult because there is so much crammed in here. Now, there are other options in this sort of price point that are this rack mount, control it over, an iPad or whatever kind of design. But I personally think this one, the value for dollar, if you're considering moving to a digital mixer, you owe it to yourself to try one of these at least. The value is out of this world. So one of the big things that I love about it, number one, 12 mic inputs. At this price range, if you go with an analog board, a lot of them, 8, give or take. Some maybe 10. You might be able to push up to 12 on certain models, but for the most part, I've seen a lot at the exact same price as this, having 8 mic preamps. So having 12, it's quite a bit. Would I rather be a full 16 or even a 14? Yes, because once I start micing up a whole drum kit, 12 it's just not quite enough depending on the band. But for the most part, yeah, I'm just really happy with having 12 mic inputs at this price range was a game changer for me. Not having to bring my giant consoles out and stuff for, we need 9 mics. And it's, okay, well, I guess I got to bring out the big boys. No, this has 12 right out of the gate, and that's really nice. We got 4 aux sends. Technically, I think you can do as much as 6 if you use splitters out of the headphone jacks, and that is in the settings. It's not just using the headphones as extra auxes, like you can actually turn them into them. That's really good, and at this price, very, very nice to see. And on top of that, each of those aux outs has its own dedicated 31 band EQ. That alone is worth the price to admission. If you look at an analog board, like somebody was asking me about that Behringer EQ unit that I reviewed a while back, and I still really like that equalizer. It's a really good 31 band EQ. But they wanted to run 4 monitors, 2 mains, and they were going to end up having to buy 3 of them. I told them, okay, I mean, depending on what mixer you have, though, like that isn't a bad choice, but this is going to save you money and time and stuff you have to haul, right? Because you have a 31 band equalizer for each output. That's great. And that is a lot of cost, weight, and time saving right there. Now, it does have an auto feedback suppression. Theirs is the Advanced Feedback Suppressor 2. Right, so it's like their later gen of it, and that comes courtesy of DBX, right? So if you've used the DBX drive rack, right, they have their auto feedback suppression and stuff. But that brings me to something else that I think this does super, super well, and that is hard to fathom at this price point. The metering on here is out of this world. So what I mean by that, well, I'm talking about the feedback suppression, is unlike some auto feedback things where you just see like a light turn on and it says, hey, we're suppressing feedback. This tells you exactly which frequencies it's pulling out, which can be real handy if you're wanting to learn. So similar to that Behringer unit where like the lights would light up to show you which frequencies your feedback was, really hitting. This is going to tell you what frequencies it's pulling out. So if you hear those, you can then, the next time you go to use it, try to manually do it and see if like, okay, I've heard that frequency before. That's somewhere around here, right? It can give you those steps in the right direction for manually doing it. Or you just hit the button and have auto feedback suppression. Especially, like for me, I frequently use this for myself and my band. I'm performing. I'm singing. I'm walking around on stage with the microphone. I love having auto feedback stuff, right? The feedback suppression on here is very good and very transparent and can be toggled on and off. It can be locked, right? So you can turn off or set rather the feedback suppression so that you don't get like, I'm doing a big squeal on my electric guitar and it thinks it's feedback. No, you can get rid of that. It's great. So that is a good piece of value right there, because you don't need to bring a bunch of 31 band EQs and stuff for all of these. You don't need, a DBX drive rack running your auto feedback detection or anything like that. You've got it built in. Now, on top of that, thanks to DBX, we do have compressors on every channel. And that to me is huge. Now, I love my Yamaha mixers and my Samson mixer because of the built-in compressors. It's so easy to use, one knob, but there's only a few channels on each of those boards that have them. This, on every channel. And very robust settings. Now, if those are intimidating for you, if you're like, I'm used to the single knob live. Those are my preference because it's just so easy to set. But in the studio, you can set your knee and you can set your ratio and there's another big setting. Oh, my brain. Threshold, all that stuff. You can adjust that on these if you want. Or you can click the preset. Bam, it's done. You've got something, right? Vocal 1. Male vocal 2, right? You can just set your presets to even set you just in the right direction, then tweak from there. Very nice to have, though, compressors on every channel, right? I started doing sound when you needed to have a rack full of compressors if you wanted compression. I've got a bunch of, 2 and 4 channel Behringer compressors and gates for this exact reason. So having those dynamic adjustments right into the board, I love it. You will too. Trust me. Those are all really, really, really handy. Now, it also has built-in effects for running guitars in. This took me a while to really wrap my head around how useful it could be. Now, if you are a independent band and you're running your own sound and stuff, that might be exactly what you need, right? You run your pedal board into it, you set it to like a Fender Tweed sort of sound. Don't even have to bring an amp. That could be really, really handy. For me, I haven't tested it enough to be able to trust it for that, but I've had amps die on me on stage before, or like a tube go, or I've had a fuse or something like that pop in something. Plug straight in, limp through the rest of the gig, knowing that I don't need a backup amplifier. That's worth it to me to have that built in there, even if I'm almost never using it. Having it there is just extra peace of mind. It's hard to put a price on that. And like I said, from a cost to performance ratio, oh man, is this thing ever a really good deal, right? We've got 12 inputs. They all have compressors, I believe gates and stuff as well through DBX. We've got all of these aux outs that all have 31 band EQs plus auto feedback correction and detection. Now, if you're looking at one of these and you're trying to decide between, say, it and the smaller version or the bigger version, if you're going to be rack mounting it, I wouldn't bother. I would go with this one personally. If you're going to be hand holding it, if you don't need the extra inputs and stuff, go for it. It's still a really good value for money, but this one I think is usually going to be worth the extra jump up. And again, if you're rack mounting it, I think it's 100% worth it because it's going to take up basically the same amount of space anyway, and it's not a whole lot more money. You will notice if you're on the market for one of these, the whole lot more money version is the 24 channel. I think in Canada here, it is just shy of 3 times. Like it's like 2.6, 2.7 times the price of the 16. And that is worth it if you need the extra features. The big 3 is it has a more robust Wi-Fi card, which I'm going to do a video specifically about that because I have some theories on that. Eliminating the need for an external router for the extra range and stability, pretty big, especially at that level, right? At this price range, I can forgive it for having some quirks with the Wi-Fi. When you're talking about something as expensive as the 24-channel version, can't really let that slide as much. So I'm really glad that they put a better card in there. Has more mic preamps. Who knew, right? The 24-channel version would have more channels. I know, right? The big thing, though, is it is a recording interface. This one, you can plug a USB drive into the rec input, and you can get yourself, a nice little stereo recording of the show. Real handy for, say, syncing up to video later or something like that, right? It's really nice to have it, but the more robust 24-channel UI has full multi-track recording. That might be worth its weight in gold to you. Again, value for money-wise, yeah, that thing is over twice as expensive as this, right? For me, live sound, running a rental business and doing sound for local bands and stuff, I would rather have 2.5 of these than one of the big ones. But if I didn't already have a really good recording interface, that becomes a whole lot more tempting, right? Now, I don't need to buy a recording interface. I can get the bigger, more badass version of this thing, use it for both. Problem solved. But I already have, I've got an RME recording interface. Like I'm not, retiring that for quite a few years. I don't need the bigger one myself, but I do think it is worth the money if you need the feature set. Right? So you have to make that decision. But for me, yeah, the 16, it is the perfect balance of ins and outs and just an overwhelming amount of value for somebody who is used to working in the analog realm when it comes to live sound, right? I used to have I don't know if it was a Lexicon, I think it was one of the other bigger brands, like an outboard reverb unit, because you needed one. That was like the must. A bunch of outboard EQs. I had have still a bunch of outboard compressors that they just pick up dust now because everything is built into here. Yeah, it's fun to have knobs, switches, and dials, but I like that in the studio. Live, make it easy. I digress. I love this thing. I think it is a really good value for the money. If you disagree, that's okay. I am going to do a video specifically talking about the Wi-Fi stuff because I think I have figured out something to do with that. And I'll just do that as a quick little follow-up to this. But you owe it to yourself to try this if you are looking for a very, very good bang for the buck, robust, great sounding mixer. It's hard not to recommend this thing. But I do recommend coming back for the Wi-Fi specific video on this, because we'll get into that, and that might be a bit of a make or break thing, just if you're not very computer savvy. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be me standing here again. So be right back.